Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I want to start with a question and ask you if you can think of a time where you felt and then acted on a strong intuition, even if, or maybe especially if it felt kind of crazy or unexpected, kind of came out of nowhere and was not something that you would have maybe thought of using your rational planning mind. I'll give you a quick example of one from my own life. I was standing in front of the Trevi Fountain, which is a fountain in the city of Rome that's been running for longer than the US has even been in existence, just to give you a sense of the history. And I was standing there, and Father Mark, who was a Benedictine monk and kind of one of my first teachers and mentors in contemplative prayer and meditation, I made a comment. I was there for a month with a student group, and I made a comment about how I wished I could stay for the whole semester and just live in Rome and travel around Europe. And I'll clean up what Father Mark said to me, but he turned to me, he said, you know what, call St. John's, that was my alma mater. He said, call St. John's, tell him to F off, and tell him you're staying in Rome for the semester. And it was like, I don't know if that counts as an intuition, but it certainly was not something I would have thought of. Turns out that he was kidding, I found out later, but I took him very seriously because it triggered this intuition in me of, wow, I really want to do this, and this is an opportunity, and we can actually make it happen. I did end up staying in Rome for that whole semester, took classes in theology and art. It was after getting married and having kids, ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life, and has really come to form a lot of even this work that I do, because I lived with Benedictine monks and learned quite a bit about prayer and meditation and integrating that into life from them. So that's just one example of the way of an intuition can kind of pop in from kind of out of nowhere. So, you know, come back to whatever example you might have thought of at the beginning, and just for a minute think about what was the outcome if you did act on that intuition. Did you listen to it? And if so, then what came from it? Or if you didn't listen to it, do you have any regrets or feeling like maybe you missed an opportunity of a risk that you didn't take? Just something to think about to get you thinking about how intuition works. So we think of intuition as kind of like woo-woo or maybe totally unreliable. But the cool thing about what the HeartMath Institute has done in their research is that they've actually been proving for over 25 years that the kinds of intuitions that we can tune into through our heart are real and actionable. Let me give you just one example of one of the studies that they did that to me still kind of boggles my mind. So they had participants sit down in front of a computer monitor, and the computer monitor was fed a bunch of images and then given an algorithm to show them randomly at set time intervals. And not even the computer programmers knew which images would be shown when. Now, some of the images were kind of neutral, like just people going about their day that wouldn't evoke much of an emotional reaction, but others were a little more shocking, kind of grotesque in some way. You know, nothing over the top, but something that you would kind of recoil from. So what they did is they hooked up participants to both an EEG, which measures brain activity, and EKG, which measures heart activity. And here's what as they watched what was happening in these people, both in their brain and in their heart, as before and then during and after these images coming, here's what they found. Both the heart and the brain were registering different states of arousal, as if they were picking up on something, 4 to 5 seconds before the images were displayed. Let me say that to you again. Both the heart and the brain were registering at physiologically measurable levels, states of arousal 4 to 5 seconds before the images were displayed. And the arousal states were different based on whether it was a neutral picture or one that was a little more kind of emotionally charged. And they were stronger. So they were picking up on something as an intuition, some kind of information, before even the computer programmers or the computer itself had run the algorithm to know what was coming next. Now, the other piece, if you drill down into this a little bit, I said both the heart and the head were responding. But when you go even deeper into what they found is that the heart was responding on average 1.5 seconds before the brain. And what this tells us is that the heart was receiving some kind of intuitive information, responding to it physiologically first, and then following those afferent neural channels up into the brain, sending that information to the brain, alerting it to the fact there's something to be paying attention to. That's pretty wild if you think about it. And all of this occurred before any kind of conscious, rational, awareness could even register a response in the participants, and 4 to 5 seconds before the images even appeared on the screen. So let me read a quick piece from the report that the HeartMath Institute did. They said, this is a quote, "This suggests that the heart is directly coupled to a source of information that interacts with the multiplicity of energy fields in which the body is embedded." In other words, what yogis and mystics and now scientists have been saying for generations is that we are just immersed in a sea of information, and that part of the contemplative path is learning how to let go of all those obstacles that we hold internally that block us from receiving that information, some of which is very wise, intuitive information being sent to us from God or from a spirit beyond us to give us clues about where to go with our life. And that we're finding now science to back up what that's been saying all along. And this isn't coming from a guru sitting on a mountain. This is coming from hard science and data. And it gets even better. I feel like I'm on one of those tele-salesman commercials right now. But this is really important. They did the same experiment with 2 different groups of people. In one, they had people just they didn't give them any direction. They just said, you're going to sit at this computer, we're going to show you images, hook you up, all that. That was the control group. But the other group had learned heart coherence techniques like we teach in the HeartMath program, and in my Centering for Wisdom program, I include that. They practiced these right before they sat down to do the exercise. They didn't tell them why. They just said, I want you to go into heart coherence, which they could measure using the app and the inner balance sensor. And then they ran the experiment. And you can probably guess what happened. The people who were in a coherent state and who intentionally put themselves into a coherent state, their physiology responded both earlier and with a greater intensity when compared with the control group. So not only was the heart picking up something 4 to 5 seconds beforehand for all groups, that intuition came sooner and was tuned into stronger and responded to at a physiological level for people who did heart coherence techniques to tune in. So, pretty cool stuff just in general, but now I want to invite you to think of a time where you got stuck, where maybe you didn't know what to do next. This was the topic of this live video for today. What to do when you don't know what to do. Now, if you're innovating or you're a business owner or you're working in leadership roles, this happens to us a lot, and maybe you don't even think about where those little places are that you get stuck and how much energy and time can get wasted in those places. But a couple of examples that come to mind that I've experienced, clients have experienced. So one could be like a due date coming up on a project, maybe one that you created or that your boss gave you, and that deadline is starting to come up and you're starting to get anxious, but you still don't know where you want to go with it. You don't even know where to start. That's one. Another one would be maybe you want to create a new product or a service, or you've gotten some feedback from your clients or customers about something isn't working, but you're not really sure how to take this from like a concept into a reality, right? So you can roll that out for them. And then this one I think is maybe the most common, and so common that we don't even notice it as being stuck. If you're like a lot of people in leadership roles feeling overwhelmed, you probably have more on your to-do list than any one person could reasonably ever accomplish. Not just in a day or a week, but potentially in a career, right? Because if you're in a high-level leadership, there's just always more to do than you can possibly do. It's part of finding the balance of staying healthy and effective as a leader, is how do you deal with that? If you have that to-do list always going, but you don't have a sense of where you should focus your energy or where you should start or what you should do next, like what's the most important next thing out of the bajillion things on my list that I could do, that's getting stuck. That's not knowing. It's very common, and it really, really over time contributes to feeling chronically overwhelmed. Psychologists and others call this a sense of time scarcity. If you don't feel like you have enough time or energy or resources to get done the things that you feel like you have to get done, you're just constantly putting yourself in this state of, oh my gosh, what should I do, and I'm never going to get it all done. And you can imagine that's not very effective or efficient way to act and to try to get your work done. So some of those different times where you might get stuck and not know what to do next, we can take the science and the practices of intuition combined with a deep centering practice to keep us in that deep state of healing and letting go, and apply it to help you get unstuck when you're not sure what to do next. If you're stuck in that chronic freeze, or you just, it's like, I don't know, what should I focus on this week? And so one of the techniques that we teach in the HeartMath program and that I've now included into the Centering for Wisdom program is something called the freeze frame technique. I teach you how to do it in the program. I can give you the kind of the flyover here. It has to be taught live and in person. But you kind of lay out the issue or the problem, which could be what should I do next on my to-do list. Could be something really small or it could be something really big. Then you just note any thoughts or feelings that you have before doing the exercise. Then you get yourself into a coherent state. So by then you will have learned some heart coherence techniques and you'll know how to use the inner balance sensor. So you'll know with 100% certainty, oh, I'm in the green. That means I'm heart coherent. My heart rhythms are aligned and coherent with my brain rhythms. So you're tuned in. Then you just ask yourself, or ask God, or ask, into your heart, however you want to think of that, what would be a more efficient or effective attitude, feeling, or action? And then all you do is listen. You listen for whatever your first intuition is, and you write it down. And then you sometimes there's a stream of things that come. Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes you do it and you don't get anything, but then you can come back to it later. Or maybe an intuition comes to you when you're driving home later that day, or you're in the shower, or you're lying in bed at night. But whatever it is, when that first intuition comes, you write it down, and then eventually you make a plan to act on it, which is amazing because we've got scientifically validated, infallible source of knowledge and wisdom that's guided by your heart and aligned with your heart. And I mean that both physically, but also emotionally and spiritually with that higher sense of purpose. And it's a skill that you can refine, you can practice, and you can enhance. In fact, the more you do it, the better you get, because not only can you see your coherence in real time, you can also see your baseline shift happen over time using the app. As you see yourself spending more and more time during your practice in that high coherence state, and you see your average coherence start to go up over time. That's pretty cool stuff. So it's a way to get unstuck and to know what to do next and to not get kind of frozen into, the never-ending to-do list and that sense of time scarcity. So I want to leave you here with a question about why, right? Like, why learn these techniques? I mean, some of it I think is kind of self-obvious or self-evident, but it's worth kind of stepping back for a second. I mean, on the one hand, it helps you to just lower your stress and to improve your problem solving. And that's amazing and that's important and that's where we start. But I gotta tell you, what motivates me to keep doing this work and what I see clients doing all the time that just keeps me more jazzed to do this more and more is that we need desperately wise leaders who are guiding organizations. And I don't care if it's your own small business or if it's a billion-dollar organization, international, global, whatever, and everything in between. We need leaders in those organizations. We need leaders and loving members of our families and our communities who are tuning into this higher intuition that's coming from God. It's coming from something beyond ourselves that has only the greatest good of both us as individuals and us as a community in its desire. So you're acting on behalf of a greater good, something bigger than yourself, and you're innovating in ways that serve the common good. Ultimately, that's what keeps me motivated. Yeah, we want to get out of that cycle of chronic stress and overwhelm, and there's value just in that alone, in the healing that happens. But the real magic is like, once you kind of taste that and you start to get free from all those automatic responses and reactions that you've been having your whole life, and we all have them, it's okay. But once you start to find freedom from that and you start making decisions that are aligned with that higher purpose and guided by heart intuition, then we start to see, oh wow, this is like spreading out to have a greater impact on our families, our communities, and it's only limited by our imagination. So that to me is like my root why. That's why I do this. So if you want to learn more, then I've got a couple of invitations for you to go a little bit deeper. The easiest thing to do is just go over to thomasjbushlack.com/mentor. Again, it's thomasjbushlack.com/mentor. There's a link to it in this video description and in the chat box. And you can see more about all the pieces that fit together in that Centering for Wisdom plus HeartMath program that I've put together. Learn more about it. And that might be enough for you. You might want to sign up right away. That's awesome. We're going to start a new cohort here this spring. Or if you still have questions or you want to learn a little bit more, you're not sure it's kind of right for you, you can book a call with me. I call it a breakthrough call or a breakthrough session. And what I'll do is just ask you questions about where you are now in your spiritual practice, in your career, in your relationships, where you'd like to be. And then if I can help you get there, I will discuss that with you. And if I can't, that's fine too. And possibly invite you to consider working together. But it's definitely more about seeing where you're at and where you could be, and then whether or not that works for both of us. So that's kind of the basic practice. When you go to thomasjbushlack.com/mentor, you can actually scroll down at the bottom. There's a place where you can see my calendar and book a call with me if you have a question and want to sign up for a time with me. So that's what I invite you to do right now. In the meantime, I really hope that you're finding some inspiration to continue your contemplative practice if you already have one, to deepen it if you're already in that practice. Or if it's something that you've just been thinking about for a long time, I really encourage you to take some kind of action, like checking out my site or something that will help you start to learn and deepen a new practice and then integrate it into your daily life. Again, for your own healing and health, to get out of that chronic stress, amazing start, and then to really tap into what you have that the divine wisdom wants to express through you. The whole reason you were put on this earth, and get in touch with that and channel that through things like the freeze frame technique and the centering prayer and meditation and the other simple things that I teach, then please go over there, check that out right now, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.